Shit We've Read is a proud member of Bilo Network, a network of geeky podcasts.
Please visit shitwe'veread.com to support the show.
Now, let's talk about some books. Hello and welcome to a special edition of Shit We've Read, because on today's episode, we will be talking with author St. Gibson about her latest novel, Evocation, available now from Angry Robot Books. For those not already familiar with this book, it is book one of the Summoner Circle, a spellbinding new polyamorous urban fantasy series. My name is Jason Rico, and joining me for this discussion is none other than our resident interviewer extraordinaire, Bella Romero.
Hey Rico, you excited about this book?
Yeah, I'm excited about this book. I'm super excited about this interview. It was great talking to Saint.
Yeah, Saint was awesome. I think our listeners need to know that Saint's team reached out to us, which was really cool. You were already fangirling over the book
Absolutely.
Before we got the request. It was already on all of our TBRs. And then for the authors, reps to reach out to us specifically was just like a we made it moment and total bucket list. So we're really excited to show you guys the interview and hopefully get y'all to like this book as much as we did because it's a good one. It's really great. As bisexual, polyamory, dark academia hosts, we are very into this book. So
Former Catholics,
Reformed Catholics, lapsed Catholics, whatever you want to call it.
That'll go a long way. Yeah, for anyone who hasn't already read this book, since it did just release yesterday, let me go ahead and read the synopsis to let you know what this book is all about. As a teen, David Aristikoff was a psychic prodigy operating under the shadow of his oppressive occultist father. Now, years after his father's death and rapidly approaching his 30th birthday, he is content with the high-powered life he's curated as a Boston attorney, moonlighting as a powerful medium for a secret society. But with power comes a price, and the devil has come to collect on an ancestral deal. David's days are numbered, and death looms at his door. Reluctantly, he reaches out to the only person he's ever trusted, his ex-boyfriend and secret society rival Reese, for help. However, the only way to get to Reese is through his wife Moira. Thrust into each other's care, emotions once buried deep resurface, and the trio races to figure out their feelings for one another before the devil steals David away for good. ...
Dun, dun, dun.
Like you said, Bella, I love this book. I know you enjoyed it as well. And I know our listeners are going to love it too, which is why, for those who are not already aware, we're hosting a giveaway to give one lucky listener their very own copy of Evocation. And not just any copy, but one of the limited first print run editions with exclusive end papers, a red ribbon bookmark, and silver foiled boards. Seriously, this book is gorgeous. To find out how to enter, head on over to our Instagram at shitwe'veread and check out the giveaway posts. But also, make sure you stick around to the end of the episode for an additional way to enter. Giveaway ends Friday, June 7th at 11:59 p.m., so don't waste time. All right, I think we've yapped on enough, so how about we shut up and kick it over to our conversation with author St. Gibson.
Enjoy.
Welcome to the show, Saint. It's great to have you with us. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us about your new book, Evocation.
My pleasure.
You have two great hosts for this episode because we both love dark academia, magic, lore. One of us is bi, one of us is poly. So we're checking all the boxes on the book.
Audience.
Exactly.
Let me tell you.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. We've even previously discussed A Dowry of Blood back when it was self-published.
Oh, that's awesome.
So congrats on that being picked up and you just blowing up. We're very surprised, but also not surprised that those self-published copies are going for like 100 now. So
it's cuckoo. It's cuckoo. I've had friends send me like screenshots of like the eBay, and it's wild. But it's a really special thing, and if it's really important to someone to have that original copy, I totally get it. And the art is beautiful, and there is something really special about the first version of something.
Absolutely, yeah. We're happy we were able to pick those up. We had no idea they were going to blow up, and now they're in a personal collection. I'm keeping that forever, and it's great.
Until I murder him next week and pry it off his cold dead body.
The raw list.
Because I would.
Yeah. There's a long list of books that Bella's going to murder me for one day.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just got to wait till like really it hits a boiling point and then Don't accept any food from me. Don't go on any unnecessary journeys.
Okay, we're talking about Evocation, though. We're not talking about prior books. This book is gorgeous. The arc, I have the arc is gorgeous. The all editions I've seen of it are beautiful. The special editions. I just today, Angry Robot announced the pink cover that was
there is like a gorgeous like Barbie pink dust jacket that Amy at Angry Robot made, and it's so beautiful. It was originally just a fun little sale asset for Valentine's Day, but people loved it so much that we are printing the dust jackets in that beautiful Barbie pink and giving them out at the ticketed events at the UK tour. And there will also be some available at ticketed events in the upcoming US tour, which will happen over the summer, and we'll announce dates soon. But I'm so tickled pink even.
Well done.
That was great. Pun very much intended.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure we'll try to go to one of those events here in the States if they're nearby.
Yeah. Again, over my dead body will I not be going to that. So I'll haunt it. It's fine.
So here on the show, before we start our episodes and actual discussion of the main book at hand, we always like to talk about some of the other things that we're individually reading. Mm-hmm. And so question to you is, what are some of the other books on your plate right now that you're reading?
I am currently listening to the audiobook of The Claiming of Sleeping Beauty by Anne Rice, which is some classic, like landmark 90s erotica by Anne Rice, who I really, really love. And I owe a lot of my career to the legacy of Anne Rice, truly, in a lot of different ways. And it's really lovely and fun and sexy and kind of it is a fairy tale in a lot of ways, but it's also nice to kind of look at it with a little bit of an author eye and study parts of it as well. So I'm kind of doing a close reading of that. First time I read it, I was way too young. I was like 14. So now I have the adult brain so I can appreciate it more. But I'm also reading, and this is the only book I'm taking with me to the UK. It is my little airplane security book. I'm so excited. I'm reading The Sins on Their Bones by Laura. I believe the last name is pronounced Samatin. And that is a really excellent queer Jewish fantasy about two ex-husbands on opposite sides of a war. It's really steeped in kind of Jewish mysticism, and it has a really cool magic system and great characters. So it's awesome. Laura is incredibly talented, and I was lucky enough to get a arc, which is going to be my little companion while I fly. So I'm excited to hopefully finish that while I'm abroad.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, adding that to my TBR.
It's good. You should.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, it's funny that you say your little airplane book. I read Evocation, the arc, on an airplane, where I first started on an airplane. I was flying to Texas for my grandma's 80th birthday celebration. And I think it's the one and only time I've ever wished for a flight to be longer, both to and from.
Goodness.
Yeah, this was even before we knew we were going to talk to you. Like, I love that book so much. And then when the opportunity came to chat with you, I'm like, absolutely, we need to do it. I'm very nervous to do it, but we need to do it. So
I don't bite.
Yeah.
For those listening who don't know what Evocation is, can you tell us what this book is about?
Yes, I would be happy to. Evocation is the first book in a 4-book series. It is a urban fantasy romance series following the lives and loves of a group of very interconnected magicians and occultists living in Boston. And Evocation follows David, who is this high-powered lawyer and a very successful psychic who kind of has the world at his feet, who realizes that he is subject to an ancestral deal someone in his family made with a demon, and he only has until his 30th birthday to break the curse. Otherwise, the demon comes for his soul and he's dead. And to do that, the only two people that he can trust are his ex-boyfriend and secret society rival, and that rival's new witch wife, who also doesn't like David very much. And as they are kind of forced to work together and do a lot of research and summoning and a lot of talking about their feelings, they realize the feelings involved might be bigger than they thought. So it's a really, really fun. It's a little bit soapy. It's slightly lighter than some of my other things, but there are still kind of some fun, dark moments and some sexy moments. And it has a happy ending. So what more could you possibly ask for?
Wonderful. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, if I didn't already read it, I'd be sold again. So.
I know, seriously.
Actually, I just I got approved for the audiobook version.
I'm so excited.
And I'm ready to go back to it in audio form.
Yeah, I don't know if listeners might know this, but typically depends on the author. Authors don't get the audiobook until right before release because they take a little bit more time to make. They're these beautiful labors of love. So I am looking forward to receiving my audiobook because I've heard samples and I've heard the narrator. It's really phenomenal with Oscar Reyes narrating this one. He's really, really talented. So I'm super excited to hear the final product as well.
Oh, so am I. I typically don't reread books, but I can easily see how listening to the audiobook for Evocation would be a fun new way to experience the story. Speaking of experiencing existing stories in fun new ways, unlike some of your previous works, Evocation isn't a retelling.
Nope.
A Dowry of Blood is a retelling of Dracula's Brides, and An Education of Melis was a retelling of Carmilla. So what are some of the major differences you noticed when writing a wholly original work versus interpreting an existing story?
Yeah, I just think that some of the conversations you have with yourself are kind of different because a lot of the conversations you have at the beginning of a retelling is what am I going to keep and what am I going to change? And that can get super granular, but a lot of it comes back to that big question of what are the core themes, the characters, the story moments from the original, whether it's a fairy tale or a play or a work of fiction that I want to preserve, and what are things that I want to add or subvert? Do I want to change the setting, the time period, all that kind of thing? And that takes a little while in development. And knowing me, I kind of figured out as I go along as well. Whereas it's almost like you're playing a video game with a totally open world when you are not writing a retelling. So you have a lot more freedom of choice. But for me, at least, sometimes it can take a little bit longer in the ideation phase to really figure out what kind of story am I trying to tell? What are the influences? What are the tropes, the themes, plot points, beats, that kind of thing. So I guess one is kind of the art of working from a guide and making it your own and really connecting with the core of why you're drawn to that original work and what you have to say in conversation with it, because it's this ongoing conversation through time. Whereas a work that is not based on anything else, I mean, everything's based on a little bit of something. We're all inspired by things, but that isn't a direct retelling or a direct homage. You do, at least for me, I find I have a little bit more of an experimentation phase, and there's just a little bit more freedom in what you add and what you subtract.
What a beautiful answer. I think perhaps most people erroneously would assume that doing a retelling might be easier because you have the groundwork there, right? You just kind of run with it already. But based on your answers, it's not like that's the case at all. Like you have to actually do give a lot of thought of, like you said, what you're going to keep, what you're going to get rid of, and how are you going to make it your own. And that's such an interesting thought to have an existing source of material, but still have to put in just as much work.
Yeah, I think, at least in my experience, I've found that neither one of them, at least from where I'm standing right now, is necessarily more difficult or a little bit easier at the beginning or even at the end than the other. I think it's kind of, it's not necessarily setting yourself up more for success going either way. But I think the main difference is when you're writing something that you're kind of creating from whole cloth, it's almost like you're starting a conversation and inviting other people to come into this conversation with you. Whereas when you're doing a retelling, you are inserting yourself into a conversation that's been going on for a long time, sometimes hundreds of years, without you. And so you kind of, at least with me, I say, what am I supporting in this conversation? What am I adding? Do I have anything new to say? How do I want to say it? And then the conversation continues, and the people who read the book keep talking. And, you know, if they are inspired by that book, then they go and they have their own conversation in a different location. And it's really cool. And it's also just a huge privilege, I think, to be able to do a retelling of things that are so classic and so beloved and so important, especially to like the queer community. Like Carmilla is the lesbian vampire book. Like it's kind of a landmark for the sapphics in a lot of ways. So it is a certain level of extra consideration, but it's really, really fun as well. It's super enjoyable, especially when you let yourself think outside the box a little bit and put your own spin on things.
Wonderful. You stated online that Evocation, or at least the original frame for Evocation, was a murder mystery, which you quickly
I have said that.
decided against. As someone who loves murder mysteries, I'm curious if writing one is still something that you have plans for or hopes to do in the future.
I think, so yes, so context, Evocation has been in development for quite some time. And it's gone through a lot of different frameworks and versions. The characters and the themes have really stayed the same. The love story has stayed the same, the city. But how I get to the ending has changed drastically. And originally I was like, well, it's urban fantasy. They got to investigate something. I guess it's a murder mystery. Somebody's got to die. And I think I just kind of went in assuming, I really was like,
somebody's got to die.
Yeah, I was like, this is how the genre works. Because I think of urban fantasy and so much of what I've read, even if it doesn't have like a criminal investigation element, it does have kind of a, doing research to solve a problem to stop a bad guy. And that maps very well onto like urban murder mystery. Mm-hmm. And then I realized you have to know the murderer and you have to reverse engineer it and know how it ends at the beginning. My fiance is a thriller writer. Very, very talented thriller writer. And I would talk to him about this and he would be like, I don't think you actually enjoy that format this much. It feels kind of like you're fighting the format the whole time. And I was like, yeah, but I have to. And he's like, no, you don't. Who said that? And then it was also very similar notes that I got from my agent when I first, the version that went to my agent, who I still work with, Tara Gilbert, who's phenomenal. They were also like, the murder aspect is not super holding together and it seems kind of like an afterthought, which is kind of not how a murder should go. You want to keep this. And I was like, no. So I think from that experience, there are elements of mysteries and crime that I love. But if I were to write one in the future that was a murder mystery or was a mystery of any kind, outside of just kind of mysterious elements, I would really have to read in the genre more and watch some more movies because I've only really realized that it's something that I like recently. And I think maybe the reason I had a problem with it is I hadn't read very widely in that genre. So I was just kind of imitating things I had seen on TV and it didn't feel super natural to the story. But there's nothing wrong with trying multiple frameworks for a story and realizing that there's better ways or more effective ways or ways that are just more fun to tell the story that you want to tell. So I might return to it in the future. But yeah, that was a scrapped early draft.
I love that because I think that's where as someone who's always been interested in writing, I mean, who doesn't love books and thinks to themselves, maybe I should be a writer one day. But I leave that to the pros. I'll just read them all day long and talk to authors all day long because I love it.
We love you for it.
So you talk about like the murder mystery didn't feel very organic for you, but you know what really felt organic to me as the reader was like the bi visibility in this book. Like, love it. If you couldn't guess, I'm the bisexual one of our hosts, and I just freaking like dove into it as a former Catholic as well. I was like, okay, we're just checking boxes. And dark academia, I was like, the racism and the sexism and the boys club and the secret societies, let's go. So Rico knows all this. So the bi visibility in this book. And you've spoken out about like bi erasure, and that is something that is interwoven into the conflict with Reese and David and kind of his relationship with Moira. You know, she's like, I don't want to diminish those feelings that you have, but he's kind of like trying to fit himself into this box throughout the story. Yeah. Like you said, kind of trying to do what he thinks is expected of him. Mm-hmm. Similarly to how you felt, it sounded like about the murder mystery, like trying to do the right thing, trying to like keep chugging along in these norms. And as you've alluded to, the norm breaking that happens in this book is definitely worth reading about. But why is that so important to you? Like, why is this such a central theme to the book? I could tell it was coming from a really personal place. These are things I tell myself all the time. So I don't know. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you get me talking about this, I won't be quiet. So I'm going to try to keep this succinct.
The mic is hot. Keep going.
Yeah. So it's interesting because at least for me, and this is not true for every author, it is not one-to-one, but I often find myself working through big questions and issues that matter to me and personal kind of development things and things I'm thinking about and things I'm working on in myself in my book. So it's no surprise that a lot of them do end up, especially when it comes to like relationships and love and sex and religion and art and all these things that are really intrinsic to to me and what I care about and what I prioritize in my life, it's kind of no surprise that it does read as coming from a really personal place. And I would say, it's kind of just happened, but it is no surprise that most of my books, I think actually all of them heavily feature bisexual or pansexual characters. Sometimes most of the cast, if not all of the cast, is bisexual or pansexual, which I believe in, because we find each other like little birds and we create little flocks.
So true.
And Reese was a really great opportunity to explore that, even though this is ostensibly David's book. It's multi-POV, so a lot of the characters kind of get to share their thoughts and feelings, but David is the character who is spotlighted in this one because he's the one going through the most change. It's his big moment. It's his rubber meets the road kind of life crisis, and that will carry on as a theme for anyone else who's spotlighted in later books. But you do see a lot of Reese, and it is really important because this little triangle that is created between Reese, David, and Moira, Reese does often kind of find himself as the fulcrum point in some ways. And then as the relationship kind of evolves and becomes more equitable in different ways, David is sometimes the fulcrum and Moira is sometimes the fulcrum. And it was really fun to explore and kind of deepen the ways that they trust each other or don't, or bring out different sides of each other. And that was really cool. But yeah, Reese is a ostensibly lapsed Catholic who is from Southie in Boston, big Irish Catholic family. And on top of that is a very meticulous, ambitious, by the book, kind of person who is really image conscious and really conscious of achievement, and is just a little bit neurotic about that, which I can relate to. And so I do think for him, this is explored in later books, but it's not a spoiler to say that the two people in this book that he really finds himself drawn to are the only two people in his life he's really ever been in love with. And I do think that maybe he feels at the beginning of the book that there is an element of sacrifice and of fitting into that box. And if you want the wife and you want the house and you want the career, you don't get to have the boyfriend and you don't get to have the magic in the same way. And I think a lot of that is the thing I wanted to explore in that is a lot of that is very, very internal. There's actually not many people in Reese's life who's putting that pressure on him. He has just absorbed all of this miasma from the culture and the atmosphere and his family. And he kind of assumes that he has to be different things to different people and constantly be one person here and one person at home. And I don't think that's actually what David or Moira want from him. And I think it's a cool destabilizing thing for Reese and his character when he realizes that maybe I can be myself in a lot of different ways with a lot of different people at the same time, which takes a romantic shape in this book, but doesn't always have to in your life. But it is a sense of kind of integration. And I think that's really scary for him. And book 2 is his book, so we're going to put him through the ringer. I'm so excited. Yes. But we do see that groundwork laid in this book of him really trying to decide what is valuable to me, who is valuable to me. And, your image is not the most important thing. Power and status is not the most important thing. It's really the people in your life. But it's heavily tied into the way that he views his bisexuality and also kind of his religious identity as well, because he kind of occupies that shadowy in-between religious space of being like religious, but also not Catholic, but not magical, but also religious. Like it's a fun tension inside.
And he's not like innately magical. He has to work for it a lot. That was something that so the religion, I definitely want to get into that too, because those are one things I identified with. So you talk about like working through things as you're writing your book. I'm like, I was working through stuff reading your book. So in a good way. I was like, it's beautiful. I mean, I'm a former Catholic. At one point I wanted to be a nun. Like I was so, okay. Yeah. I feel like that's a very common queer experience for many reasons.
I went to grad school to become an Episcopalian priest. And that didn't happen.
Yeah, let's dive into that religious trauma route, shall we? So like, I think that's where like a lot of that internalized shame, one could even say like the internalized biphobia that Reese has for his own identity is so tied to religion and magic, as much as the Catholic Church denies it. there is so much overlap with like pagan traditions and folklore and religion. And so it made sense to me as someone who was Catholic and was very strongly Catholic for a long time, that these themes were interconnected, and we see them in Reese. We see that struggle against former spirituality, and then like the waspiness of it all too.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Being from like a New England religious family with certain expectations tied to it, and being queer and being bi, so you can pass as heteronormative.
Exactly.
That sort of like identity bending that you constantly have to do. And that was beautifully put in that book, where you were like, it's coming from inside him. Like I felt that in him. It was like, that's not coming from anybody but you.
Yeah.
Like we're in your head right now, and everyone around you can see that this is like an internal struggle that you're having, but they're all supporting you and trying to tell you like, you don't actually have to pick. You could have both of us. Like super supportive. Love Moira. We'll get into her later too. But yeah, it was beautiful how you kind of interwove those. And I was just kind of touched on it, your experience with religion. But how did you kind of get there with this story? I mean, you obviously started in a bunch of different places, but like, how did those interweave for you in the process?
I think I really resonated with everything you just said. And in particular, like this idea that I guess I really did explore in the book. The more I'm thinking about it, that's how it goes sometimes. I don't realize what I did until I'm on a podcast.
We love to be a therapist on the side.
I love it.
You wear many hats. Yeah.
I agree in that, at least in my experience, this is certainly not true for everyone, but I went through, as someone who also can be very work and image and success oriented and wants to be the best girl. I'm really working on that. A lot of the anguish that I experienced, especially when I was younger, like in undergraduate, late high school through early grad school, let's say, like that very tempestuous 5 years or so, a lot of the anguish I experienced over my sexuality and a lot of things about myself that I saw as being diametrically opposed. And I just assumed that other people would bounce off of or not get or never understand, that I would never be able to access that deep love and understanding. And a lot of that is kind of a demon that came from inside myself. I had people in my life who were midwifing me through these big spiritual crises and through love and dating and sexuality. I had people who were extending me that love and comfort and care and understanding. But I would retreat and be like, no, I'm bad. Actually, nobody will ever get me. No, don't go give me love. I don't deserve love, which just kind of perpetuates this cycle. So I do think that is something that comes out in Reese. And a lot of that is in religion. And I have a really kind of, I'm not going to put a label on it. I think I have an interesting relationship with religion. I've always been super into spirituality and magic and religion and philosophy and folklore, fairy tales, kind of everything under this nebulous umbrella of the way human beings use signs and symbols and stories to make transcendent meaning from our lives. Like that is so at the core of me since I literally was like 5 years old. And so I was raised in a pretty practicing, but not super strict and not denomination aligned Christian home, actually in a pretty loving, supportive environment where my parents encouraged me to be spiritually curious and to be spiritually responsible and to take care of other people and to hold myself to a certain standard, which I really appreciate. But then in late high school, I got really into conservative evangelicism. I, like a lot of, 16-year-olds, I was like, well, I'm sad and I want friends. Let's join something cult adjacent. And so I got really involved in super hardline evangelical thought, like purity culture, biblical manhood and womanhood, praying the gay away, whole nine yards. And I lived there and just kind of marinated in that while still being this person who like knew I was interested in like all different kinds of people in different ways and was interested in magic and fairy tales and the Gothic and all these things that don't seem like they map onto religion. If what you're thinking of religion is like a puritanical, oppressive, love and light, stained glass, white Jesus holding a lamb in a Baptist church. Like, that is an incredibly narrow, restrictive view of religion that has caused a lot of harm. But that's where I was living. I was in the South. Those were my options. And that is also what I chose. Again, there were people around me that were offering me solutions. And I was like, no, I deserve to feel bad. And I kind of was in that spot until college. And then in early college, very classic story, the deconstruction kind of started slowly. And I was involved with some smaller Bible study groups where I made really good lifelong friends who we have all now come out. We've all moved cities. We're all at different jobs. Like, it's great. And I'm really grateful for that. But that was a really tempestuous, difficult time for me, that deconstruction process. And I'm going to tell this long story. I'm not going to hijack the entire conversation talking about church, but it is relevant.
But we could.
I have this very distinct memory of going to this progressive seeming kind of folksy indie all are welcome church that I was at, not knowing that it was an Acts, I think it's 29 church, which inside baseball is a very pretty conservative theologically and socially kind of group. But they're very good at presenting themselves as kind of come as you are.
They always.
It's acoustic, the energy is very welcoming. And I remember meeting up with the pastor of this church who I had really grown to trust and admire at like maybe 19 or 20 years old, and being like, hey, I'm so excited. I think I'm being like led to ministry. Like, maybe I want to be a pastor. And he was like, so fun fact, we don't ordain women, so I actually can't help you. And we had this big argument, and it was something that they were not upfront about. And that was really kind of a breaking point for me. And I remember calling my dad about it so mad. And my dad was super supportive, which is a great memory for me. But from there, I did end up pursuing creative writing, art, continuing to study religion. And then I went to grad school at Princeton Seminary to train to be an Episcopalian priest. And for those of you who might not know at home, Episcopalianism is a very ritualistic, super like smells, bells, stained glass robes, whole 9 yards denomination. So it brings in those kind of magical, sacred elements, but it is typically, and in America, much more socially progressive. They've had female clergy since I think 1969 or 1967, somewhere in there. They have gay and trans clergy. They do queer marriages. They typically are pretty involved in social justice. So it was a really big paradigm shift for me. And it was also at grad school that I met people who were working as priests, social workers, chaplains, who were bisexual and trans and like all these other things that I thought were not allowed. And that was awesome and transformative for me. And also through all that, I was really interested in magic, and I've been a tarot reader for 10 years, and I've studied some of the different magical systems in the book myself or researched them. And so it is just kind of a mismatch of everything I love and that matters to me. But that is the personal context, I think, for a lot of the stuff that we dig into with Reese, because I just kind of want to shake him and be like, you can be everything at once. You can be all the things. It's fine. Because that has been my big journey over the past probably 10 years of my life. Long story. That's the story.
No, I love that, because you can really feel that in the way that Reese has written. All of his internalized struggle really resonated with me. I'm sure it resonates with a lot of your readers who come from that background, whether it's socially conservative, waspy parents, or very religious otherwise, because religious trauma has no geographical, racial, or gender lines. Nope. So anybody can experience it at any time in their lives. It's great. It's wonderful. Highly recommend. But no, I really appreciate you sharing that, because I could tell in the writing of just all of Reese's passion for learning about religion and exploring his love for David and Moira, and like really just growing his heart throughout the book, like expanding what he defines as love and a relationship. Was beautiful. It was beautiful to watch. I'm really glad to hear that he is the focus of the second book, because I really did identify with him. But would you say that Reese was your favorite, or is there maybe another character that you really loved a little bit more? I mean, parents don't play favorites, obviously, but maybe there is one that you've mentioned being a favorite, perhaps in the book.
This is not a cop-out answer. This is really true, because the more time I spend with this series, I feel like I learn so much more about the characters, and I fall in love with them in new ways, and I workshop different themes and things that are important to me in different characters, and I find more of myself and the people I love in them, as well as more surprises. So that's all very true. But I think while I was writing Evocation, it was David Hours. I was really really excited about exploring David, and he was really, really important to me, still is. But I also just adore Moira, and she's so special to me. And I think that's been one of the most rewarding characters to work with, because the more time I've worked on all these characters, but especially Moira, I'm like, the depths just keep going. Like, there's still more. And that is really, really fun to uncover as an author, and kind of put in that work and be like, what's your deal actually, though? Like, give me more lore. And she's just she always has lore.
Mm-hmm.
So I love them all. I do love the main trio a lot, and I love a lot of the side characters, but it was real David Hours when I was writing Evocation. I spent a lot of time with him because it's his book.
So yeah, because Moira has like your tarot love. I would say a lot of like your self-acceptance love. Reese carries your like emotional trauma around church and religion and like self-acceptance. Mm-hmm. What does David carry for you as a character?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will add one more thing too with Moira, is definitely the tarot and the community service and the self-acceptance and kind of the radical intimacy that I believe in. She really embodies.
Love that.
But also, I don't know if this reads right now or maybe will come out later, but something I'm really interested in with her that means a lot to me is she kind of actually copes by putting other people first. And she's a little bit afraid of her damage is she's always afraid of like being quote unquote selfish. And again, she has people in her life around her who are like, baby girl, be selfish. Like, you can want the power, you can want the man, you can want the respect, like, it's fine. And she's like, no, I have to like be nice, and I have to help people. And I do think that is something I'm really excited to explore in the future as well. But with David,
I did feel that did come through.
I always have to shout that out, because I love characters like that. And that was really intentional with her. And I've known people in my life like that, and I've done that too. And I think this is a generalization, but I think potentially a lot of women feel that definitely. So that is something that's important to me. But yeah, I think David also has some of my best qualities and some of my worst qualities. But in general, as a character, what I'm super jazzed about exploring in this book with David is kind of that drive to perform and achieve, and that need for applause, and that need to be the golden boy, because you've been told since you were a child that like maybe love was not available to you, but success sure as hell was. So you may as well pursue success at all costs. Mm-hmm. So I love him. I've talked about this on pretty much every podcast I've done, but I'm really into this. Like, on the one hand, he's this really fun, he's a little bit overpowered. Like, if he was a video game character, like his stats are through the roof. Like, he's rich, he's hot, he's got the job, he's got the car, he's psychic. Like, he is this kind of fun power fantasy in a way. But a lot of that is really stuff that he's built up around him to prevent the trauma from getting through, and to not do the hard work, and to not be in relationship with people, and to not deal with his own demons or his own substance abuse issues. And so this book is really kind of breaking him down so that he can rebuild himself in more intimate, loving connection with other people. And that's kind of the whole like theme of the book. That was what I really kept in the front of my mind when I was writing this one. You know, there was a lot of scenes I wanted to write with other characters. There was a lot I wanted to do with Reese and Moira and other people as well who like live rent free in my head. But it really all came back to, does this serve in this moment David going through it so he can come out through the fire on the other end, hopefully a better version of himself.
Yeah, really excited to see his journey throughout the books. He did have a lot of growth in this book, but I think like a reasonable amount given what happens without spoilers.
Right.
Everything he has to face and overcome and learn about him and his family. I think he does a really good job of like growing and still carrying the trauma. Like he's not miraculously cured by the end, but he's finding some new coping skills, which is just like truly like chef's kiss. Like was ready for that sequel. Was really sad when I realized this is an arc, which means the the book's not like the book wasn't actually out yet. So it's a bummer. I was like, cool. Now I'm just reading An Education in Malice to keep the vibes going.
Thanks.
So yeah, of course, love the vibes. But I know, so kind of pivoting because I want to hear Rico's thoughts on this too. But there was another character that was introduced in the book that Rico has thoughts on. Rico, I'll let you talk about this other character because he's been real excited to talk about him.
Well, I gotta say, Moira is by far my favorite character in the book. I adore that woman. I would die for her. I would kill for her.
So if I had to pick one person to actually have in my life, Moira.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. I adored that character so much. But another character that we got introduced to, and I'm not going to say who it is for spoilers, but you'll know probably exactly who it is. Like, there's a hedonistic, fast-living rock star sibling.
Nobody asked me about her.
No, oh my God. I need so much more of her. And I need to know, please, like, is she in the next book? How much should we get with her? Like,
needed more. Yeah.
Yes.
So I will say her name. I think that's fair. We're talking about Leda, who shows up in Evocation. Yeah, she's a rock star, chaos magic, borderline cult leader, nightclub owner.
Chaos magic, yes.
Wonderful. What a description.
I can confirm Leda stays through the whole series. She is very important, even though she kind of appears late in the game in Evocation and then kind of drifts out. That's intentional. I have big dreams, big designs. And she really means a lot to me. And it's funny you said that because I was like, I've just been thinking about Leda specifically a lot this week and kind of what I want to do with her in the future. I've been kind of workshopping that character. So I was very excited when you brought her up, but no, there is more of her to come. I was going to say something. I just think she's a great foil to a lot of the other characters. And she's also kind of a charisma build and kind of overpowered, but also very similar to maybe someone else in the book. She has a lot going on under the surface that I want to workshop with her. So it's super cool. She's great. And I remember I was going to say I remember when I got the original round of notes from my agent, who is lovely and editorial and has very good advice. This was early on, back when Tara was like, you don't need to have a murder mystery. This is fine. There's enough going on. Just rewrite it. And I was like, thank goodness. They were like, are you sure you need Leda in this? Like, she comes in pretty late. She's kind of a big personality. We don't get everything explained about her. Like, can you just cut her? And I was like, absolutely not. I will do anything else.
And you're still with this agent? Are you kidding me?
Oh no, this was good advice at the time because there was literally one Leda scene in the original. And my agent was like, it's kind of strange that you just have a character that seems really important that comes in for one scene. Like, does she belong in another book? And I was like, no, I have a vision. So we worked her more into this.
Okay. They're allowed to stay then. They can stay in your life. I just was
it was actually very good advice.
Yeah.
And Tara was like, okay, we can keep her, but you have to make her earn her keep. And I said, that's fine. But I love her and I'm so glad you do too.
Yes,
I'm always like restraining myself from talking about Leda because this is really like the trio book and it's really David's book. And I don't want to confuse people with too many characters, but she's pretty cool. She's pretty cool.
She was a fun little snack in the middle. Just like, oof.
It's almost like a musical number in the middle of a movie. You're like, that was nice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She was the comedic relief.
Yeah.
In the middle of like some really deep stuff. Because you feature polyamory in this book, obviously. And I think Leda, she was a great example for our trio of what's possible.
She is a little bit more if I had to choose language, I think Leda is probably a little bit more like solo poly, a little bit more like non-hierarchical. Her relationship boundaries are a little bit more permeable. So she is kind of living this loud, radical life very comfortably. And she's also older than a lot of the other characters, which is important. Leda's almost 40 when we meet her. She's like 37. She's like in her late 30s. And so she is very comfortable in her skin. And I think it's a really fun scene when these other characters who maybe aren't meet her and they're like, wow, that's a lot. You can do that? That's allowed?
That's so funny because now I really do. I didn't put the math wasn't mathing for me. So like it was hard for me to like put a number to Leda. That now I can see why Rico really identifies with her. Because I think he's that same age as much as
yeah. So I mean, you both have shared a lot about your histories and your
therapy hour. I'm so sorry.
No, it's my turn. Put me in coach.
We always turn it into books are therapy. Okay, they're cheaper than therapy.
Yeah, no,
right?
I think it's only fair for me to say that also former Catholic.
Look at us.
I know. Look at us. And
we find each other. Let me tell you.
And in the last few years, I have speaking of finding your own identity. The last few years, I've realized that I am polyamorous, and it was something I really struggled with at first because I was like, that's a no-go, socially taboo. There's a whole debate whether it's poly queer or not, and so I'm kind of having to like reconcile my Catholic upbringing with what I'm feeling. And then now a lot of stuff in my past is making sense if I am polyamorous. Mm-hmm. And so I think one of the reasons why this book really resonated with me and really just struck a chord when I was on that plane to my grandma's birthday was because I just
really found you at the right time. It sucker punched you.
It did.
Yeah, you're like, hold on, Grandma. Hold on.
It did.
Gotta work some things out.
And it was just like, I'm almost living vicariously through these characters. Like I am not currently exploring polyamory, but here are these characters who are, and we have Reese who like wants to have it all, and he has his partner who's like, go ahead, like explore that. And it's a little bit of like wish fulfillment for me, but maybe in the future. And then we have Leda who's just living her best chaotic solo poly life, and just beautiful. All the characters are just like like they're hitting when they need a hit for me. They're resonating.
It was super important for me in this story, especially because it's set in our world in the modern day in a recognizable city. It is a fantasy. There's magic and kind of like psychic superpowers and demons and everything, but it's a little bit more grounded and realistic than some of the other things I've written, which have been much more operatic and gothic and out of time. It was really important to me to hopefully with candor and sensitivity and care. I'm always learning, but that was really important to me to portray different people in different relationship structures and in relationships that were going through change or had been that same way for a long time. So there's Leda, who's kind of at one end of the spectrum. There's our little trio in the middle who are kind of figuring out what their little triangle looks like and kind of rewriting the rule book as they go, which I think is a good policy for any relationship. I'm a big believer in friendships and love, especially if you're very close to someone. Like you need to find boundaries and structures and ways of loving each other and showing up for each other that specifically work for you. And we also have, married couples or partners or people who are dating more monogamously. And it was really important for me to kind of show a spread of different people figuring things out and making mistakes and trying to find love and be good for each other in ways that worked for them, especially in a modern setting. So I'm really glad that resonated with you. And she's one of my favorites and I don't get to talk about her a lot. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Hopefully soon, everyone's going to be asking about it because she's great.
Yeah. Love.
Yeah. And you talk about this one being more grounded in reality. And I couldn't help but notice as I started, An Education of Malice, there we go, that they're both set in New England. Do you have a love affair with New England? What's going on here? We're revisiting it twice.
Explain.
Please explain. Please talk about it.
I do. Yeah. I've lived all over the country kind of, and I've moved a lot. I moved a lot when I was a kid and I've moved a lot as an adult. So I've lived in Southern California, Western North Carolina, and up in all over New England. and Connecticut, which is kind of in the middle. In New England, but it was coastal. I don't know. It's a different vibe. It's coastal Connecticut is its own thing.
So true.
And I also lived in Boston for the better part of 4 years during that time, and I live about an hour outside of Boston now. So yeah, it's really just a matter of me. I kind of fall in love with everywhere I go. I love travel. I love cities. I love naturescapes. Like for me, environment is very evocative. If you put me in a new location and I don't absolutely hate it, which is very rare, I'm probably going to set something there. So yeah, all the Summoner Circle series pretty much is in Boston and the surrounding area. We take a field trip to
surrounding
Salem.
area. Yeah. Okay.
A field trip to Salem. I can say that. I'm pretty sure it's going to stay in. If it's not, oh well.
This is a official plea to please keep Salem in your book.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. So we get to meet some of the folks who are working and practicing in Salem. And Education of Malice is kind of middle to western, more rural Massachusetts, kind of out in the Amherst area. We wanted to place it, and it's kind of informed by some schools out there, even though the school is made up. So yeah, I love New England, but I really I dig every place that I've been. I'm like every place that I've been and loved, I want to write something and put it there. It's kind of the way that I write love letters to places.
I love that. Is there anywhere else that you want to write a love letter to in either this series or another series, another book?
I can tell you one I am and one I would like to. One I am is I have a trilogy coming out with Orbit. So Evocation and all those books are Angry Robot, Mwah, we love. This trilogy is Orbit, also Mwah, we love. And that trilogy is set in a certain region of Scotland that I visited that I really, really love, kind of the coastal Western Highlands area.
Okay.
And so it's all that landscape.
Yes.
And I would truly, one of my favorite cities, no joke, maybe my favorite city in the United States is New Orleans. And the only reason I haven't done a New Orleans book is everybody's done a New Orleans book because it is the most evocative landscape, like especially for fantasy, especially for urban fantasy.
So true.
If I can figure out what I particularly have to say about New Orleans that adds to the conversation, and the right characters come to me, a New Orleans book will probably happen. But you can catch me in New Orleans. I try to get there like once a year if I can.
I love that. I was like, at least, do a book launch there, something like tie it in with another book somehow, because it definitely is. My friend just went there. And she's the one who's like really encouraged my like witchy side. And so she got me like a gree bag, to like hone my intuition. And I was like, I don't know if this is placebo effect, but it's really working. So we're carrying that around. So I love that. Would love to see New Orleans from your perspective, but even then, even if you're just there, I'll love that for you.
And talk about healing religious trauma. The last time I was in New Orleans, I was there with my girl gang from Bible study who are all now queer. And we went for Pride. It was healing.
Hell yeah.
So healing.
I love that. Talk about reclaiming your narrative. Like, yeah. Ugh, gotta love a pride parade and like a religious mecca for other folks back in the day. Well, okay. So you talk about like places influencing your writing. Is there anything else that's influenced your writing, like TV, movies, music?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, what hasn't probably,
I'm a sponge. Like, I am someone who really believes in talking about their influences and celebrating their influences. I don't think that any book is completely unlike anything else and one of a kind. I think that's just marketing buzz. I think everything owes a little bit of a debt to everything that went into inspiring it. And then the beautiful thing is that you find all those unique and new pieces that you weave into it and you kind of create something new. So I mean, I'm always happy to talk about that. And I usually have a little list of what it's also cool. I think it's kind of a time capsule for me because I can look back on a book and know and remember the emotional and the sensory experience and the conversations I had writing that book and what I did personally. But I also, it really helps me kind of remember, like, this is what you were reading and listening to and watching at the time that was really important to you. And so it is kind of a way of forever capturing that feeling. You know, you have that book that you were obsessed with when you were 14. And it is something a little bit special to be like, yeah, that was what I was really into when I was 20. That's evidence.
So true.
I can share some of the influences behind the Summoner Circle series if that would be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. What is the time capsule for this book?
Yeah, there's a lot of things because Summoner Circle has been cooking for a long time. And it is kind of me cramming everything I like and care about into a book. And I'm amazed I sold it. And I'm amazed it's going well because I literally I made a smoothie of everything I like. And it ended up working. So that's great. It doesn't always work that way. There's plenty of scrapped books I've written that did not work that way. But Evocation and the Summoner Circle series owes so much to the Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater, if you're familiar with that series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's actually a YA series. I don't read a ton of YA, but it is my favorite series ever. It is set in the South, and it is very atmospheric, character-driven story about this group of boys and from a private school and a girl who is the daughter of a group of all-female tarot readers in town who are trying to find a ley line that will lead to a dead Welsh king that they're trying to resurrect. And it plays heavily with themes of love and fidelity and friendship and what it means to be a leader. What does it mean to be a king? What does it mean to sacrifice for your friends and the people you love? Crazy, stupid good. So with all the things I just said, you can see how that really informed the things that I was playing with in Evocation, even though I went in a different direction with the characters and the themes. And they're all adults dealing with very adult issues instead of teen issues, but that's huge. Also, I love the Constantine movie and the Hellblazer comics. John Constantine is the map, is the blueprint.
Oh.
As if you could have made this book more perfect for Rico.
No, I've seen you say that online. God, I love that movie so much. Is it accurate to the comic books? Absolutely not. But God, is it amazing. And
yes, I love it. Talk about mixing urban fantasy with religion and bisexuality and monsters, and personal demons. There's a lot of that book in here, or not that book, that's comic series and the film. And it is the way that I pay homage to that outside of just being very informed by the themes is this is canon. I think it will definitely be in some of the books, but it is canon. I've mentioned it before. It's in many of the books. Reese loves those comics. Those are his favorite from when he was young, high school. And it was one of the first times that he saw a bisexual man that he was like, I want to be like him. So that is a little love that I put in there is the character in the book. It does exist in the universe because it's our world and he loves those comics. So had to shout that out. And the other one is Spectred Isle by KJ Charles, which is an excellent queer historical novel that is also really steeped in kind of folkloric and occult fantasy.
That's definitely going on my TBR.
Good. It's ridiculously good. And I think potentially, KJ, I'm sorry if this is wrong, I think it's maybe one of KJ Charles's less known novels. It's phenomenal. It's by no means a flop, but I think maybe some of the other series are the ones people go to first that get more play. Mm-hmm. That one is so good. And it has kind of this tension between two men who are both magical, who have a complicated history, who have different accesses to wealth and power, which really comes out in Reese and David. So yeah. I will always put my cards on the table. I will always share my influences. There is no shame in that because you take those things you love that speak to you, that get into your brain. And then you realize I'm so into this theme or I'm so into this archetype or this setting. And then you take it and you make it into what you have to say about that. So those are probably the three biggest ones. Also Lord Huron, musical albums, especially the, I think it's the Night We Met album, it has that single on it, but it is that album. And the Noir Vitae or Vitae Noir album as well. Those are both really good. And yeah, so those are some of the influences.
I love that. Yeah, we don't exist in a vacuum. So it's always interesting to see where people are picking these little pieces of inspiration and weaving them together. And that does make it unique, but also shared amongst us.
And I have to say as well, just like urban fantasy from the early aughts in general. Like I
Yes.
grew up reading that, especially the Border Town books. Those raised me. Pretty sure I checked Welcome to Border Town out from the library so much that I got in trouble because I didn't bring it back. And
I love that for
also
you.
like
Yeah.
Trisha Briggs and the Nightside series. Those are also really, really phenomenal. So yeah, I owe a lot to those.
Yeah, thank you for writing this book specifically for me, and I think also Bella, I guess. But yeah, we've talked about our love affairs, your love affair with New England, and the relationships between different characters. But I'm curious, like, what was your love affair like with the book itself? Because you mentioned that you've been writing this book for many years.
Yeah.
You know, did you fall out of love with it? Did you fall back into love with it? How do you rekindle that spark if time has just caused it to go out a little bit?
I feel like if you spend so for context for the listener, I generally take about a year to 2 years to write and revise a book. There might be breaks in between that working period, so it might actually be like 3 calendar years, but I was working on it for 1 or 2, that kind of thing. Dowry of Blood is the exception. I wrote it in 6 months. I don't know how I did that. I would love to get back to that because I did pretty good work in 6 months. I took time to revise it afterwards, but it's also shorter. Dowry's only like 50,000 words. But Evocation took me about 7 years from original conception to publication. It will get published in its 7th year of existing, which is wild. I almost never sit with something that long. Some authors do. Donna Tartt takes 10 years to write a book. That's her normal. But for me, that is a really intimate long-term commitment to a piece of art, especially because I, as an artist, get bored easy. I like to be challenged. I like to change my genres. I like to kind of push my own boundaries. So there is a lot of love there, and there is a lot of personal kind of feelings attached to the book. And as I've mentioned plenty, maybe too much, there is a lot of me and the things and the people I love in the book. So I think that was kind of the little tea light that kept going even when the big fire burned out. There was always that core love of like, you're giving yourself permission to put everything you love into one book, and you're not going to do it perfectly. And there will be technical errors. There might be representation errors. There might be errors in the plot you choose, and you might not stick the landing. Like all the things that come up for you when you're, anxious about your own writing. You might get your research wrong, whatever. But I would keep coming back when I got anxious and wanted to give up to that love and to the fact that I was giving myself permission to really do it for the love of the game. And through that process of those 7 years, I was also working on other things, other books and projects. And I think giving myself that radical permission with Evocation then translated into the love and the commitment and kind of the like lay it all on the line that I was able to bring to other books. So I do feel that same love for things like Dowry of Blood and Education of Malice and other things that I've worked on in that time or I'm trying to sell or have shelved for now, whatever. But that was kind of my go for the gold moment. So it will always be special to me in that regard. But my actual practical advice for anyone who is kind of in a long-term love affair, off on rocky road with a project, is give yourself permission to step away and forget about it. You will feel better. And the book will almost definitely be better if you give yourself permission to step away and stop thinking about it. So I've revised this book many, many times. I've rewritten it, not totally from scratch, but very close to scratch a couple of times over the course of that. I've done a lot of edits with other people, with my agent, with the editors, all that kind of stuff. There was breathing room in between that. So anytime I really hit a wall or I really hit a plot hole that I couldn't figure out, or more likely I wrote myself into a corner, which I am likely to do, I would just be like, okay, whatever. I'm going to go antiquing. I'm going to watch a movie. I'm going to write something else. I'm going to go for a walk. And sometimes that would last for months and sometimes it would last for 3 days. But I think that radical permission to try things and that radical permission to step away if it doesn't feel good and is not working at a certain point is kind of what has helped me finish books. Because I used to be a serial starter and not finisher. I would just get so discouraged and I would get bored or distracted. But now at least there is a little bit more structure, and I've learned a bit through writing this that helps me be able to finish most of the things I start.
I love that step. You know what? If it if you love it, let it go. If it loved you, it comes back.
Yeah.
Goes with books too,
Exactly.
I love that. And I'm so glad that you did decide to go back to it, because this story, I think our listeners are really going to hopefully find something to identify with. I think there's a little bit of everything for everybody. And I think the love and romance are very sweet and very kind to each other. And I hope that everyone learns a little bit more about the queerness that is out in the world as a result of this book. And maybe we just make everybody a little bit gayer after reading this book. That's always, leave them. My best friend always says, leave them gayer than you found them. And I think that is just so true in life.
I can attest to that, because I am hetero, but you have left me gayer than you found me.
So true. And it's our mutual friend. It's our
exactly.
former guest. So
yeah.
You knew
I know
who
exactly
I was talking about. They also love this book. They also loved Dowry and Blood, Dowry of Blood, and An Education in Malice. So they were very excited to hear about us interviewing you. So leave them gayer than you found them is my message from them to you. Take that with you. Spread it around. But, before we wrap up, I want to make sure, is there anything else you want our listeners to take away from this book, from talking with you? Anything you want to impart knowledge-wise?
That is a great question. I don't usually get that little free space at the end. I think at the end of the day, truly and unrepentantly, and to the edges of it being cheesy, I'm fine with it. This is a power of love story. Truly. So if you like power of love stories, if you believe, or if you want to believe, that love in many forms is redemptive and is transformative and is powerful and is worth fighting for, I really hope that this book is good to you. And I hope that it is entertaining and that it offers you some comfort and helps you believe in that a little bit more, because I do.
I love that.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. Wonderful way to send us off. Well, before we say goodbye, I'll also shout out your next book, Odd Spirits, which is re-releasing later this year. And so I hopefully we'll read that for the podcast too, or maybe get to talk to you about it. But go ahead.
I would love to speak on that really quick for 1 minute.
Please do. Yeah.
For anybody listening, Odd Spirits is the prequel novella to Evocation. So Odd Spirits was the first thing I ever published. I indie published it. It was literally my first book. It was like very, very short, very, very rough. But you meet Moira, Reese, and David for the first time. You learn a lot more about Reese and Moira's relationship and their history and how they met. And you learn why Reese is mad at David at the beginning of Evocation. So if you liked Evocation, you might like Odd Spirits. And you do not have to read them together to get the whole story, but it is really fun. And if you read them in order, that also works. You can read them out of order. I wrote it intentionally so that no matter what your entry point was, you would have a good chunk of the story. But shout out to Angry Robot. When they said they wanted to do this beautiful hardcover, I said yes, on the condition of, can I please rewrite it? Can I fix a lot of the technical errors? Can I do better character work? Can we get professional dev edits, sensitivity reads, and copy edits? And they said, absolutely. Wow. So I'm really proud of it. I think it's a stronger book for it. I think it's a more compassionate book. And I think it does, gets into more character lore. So if you like these kids, there's more for you in Odd Spirits. And that comes out in October of this year, I believe.
Awesome. Lots of St. Gibson this year.
I do stay booked and busy.
You do. You absolutely do. And I know you're about to embark on your UK tour to promote Evocation in just a couple of days. So seriously, thank you for taking time to talk to us.
Yeah.
And
it's truly my pleasure. This was deeply enjoyable. I'm so happy we were able to find a time that works for us. Thank you for your good energy and your good questions. I had a blast.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Love talking to authors about their babies.
Yeah, it's great.
Love to see how the sausage is made. So, yeah.
How dare you? I'm vegan. Again, to everybody listening, Evocation is available now. So definitely go out and get it. Hardcover, ebook, audiobook. Saint, please let everyone listening know where they can find you.
You have 3 options. The best place to find me is my newsletter, which is saint.substack.com. There is a paid version if you want my essays on writing, craft, and on the publishing industry. But the main newsletter where all the main goodies are is free. And that is where I talk about what I'm reading, what I'm writing, cover reveals, sales, tour dates, all the good stuff. So if you don't super like social, that Substack will always be there for you. And the social media I'm most active on is Instagram at @StGibsonAuthor. It's a good time. And then I am also off and on with an intempestuous relationship that is slowly dying, the heat death of Twitter. But I am on Twitter or X, whatever, at @S_T_Gibson. But that's pretty much it. We don't do TikTok in this house. It was not good for me. So boundaries are good. But y'all have fun over there. I love that you're doing it. I love it when you send me them on Instagram. But I really just have Instagram, Twitter, and the Substack.
Wonderful. Wonderful. We love boundaries. So good job. Again, thank you so much for hanging out with us, chatting with us, and congratulations on the release of this book and all your success. We're big fans and can't wait to see what else you have in store for us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
And that was our interview with St. Gibson. We certainly hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And as a special thank you for listening, here is an additional way for you to enter our giveaway to win your very own copy of the limited first print run edition hardcover of Evocation. All you got to do is take a screenshot right now of the episode playing on your app of choice, or a photo if you're playing it on a separate device, and share that image as an Instagram story before Friday, June 7th at 11:59 p.m. Make sure you tag us at Shit We've Read so that we can see it, and voila, you're entered to win. Again, just share an Instagram story of yourself listening to the episode, tag us, and that's it. And while you're on Instagram, make sure you check out our giveaway post for rules and other ways to enter. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this interview and want us to do more, please like, rate, subscribe, all the good stuff. It really does help us out. Until next time, bye.
Bye.
Shit We've Read is hosted by Laura Benson, Jason Rico, and Bella Romero, with music by Joshua Chilton and editing by Jason Rico.
To join the discussion on this and all other books we've read, find us at Shit We've Read on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok.
For more information about us or to request transcripts, please visit shitwe'veread.com.
This podcast is part of the Buy Low Network. Visit buylowNetwork.com for more great geeky podcasts.
Thanks so much for listening.